come to order. Senators will be in their seats. The clerk will call the roll.
Alley. Baumgartner. Billinger. Blasey. Bowers. Clays. Corson. Dietrich. Dahl. Erickson. Fagg. Faust-Goudot. Francisco. Gossage. Haley. Holland. Holscher. Kirshen. Cluse. Longbine. Masterson. McGinn. Olson. O'Shea. Peck. Peterson. Petty. Pittman. Pyle. Reddy. Reichman. Schallenberger. Steffen.
Cluse.
Good afternoon. I've been given the opportunity to pray, and I'm going to pray Psalms 91 today. It's a prayer of declaration on behalf of those who put their trust in God. So as we bow our heads today, and as I read it, pray it, think of God's goodness towards you. He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High will abide under the shadow of the Almighty. And I will say, the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. He will save you from the fowler's snare and from the deadly pestilences. He will cover you with His feathers, and under His wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield and your part. You will not fear the terror of night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in darkness, nor the plague that destroys at midday. 1,000 will fall at your side, 10,000 even at your right hand, but it will not come near you. You will only observe with your eyes and see the punishment of the wicked. If you say, the Lord is my refuge, and you make the Most High your dwelling, no harm will overtake you, no disaster will come near you. For He will command His angels concerning you, and they will guard you in all your ways. They will lift up their hands so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. You will tread on the lion and the cobra. You will trample the great lions and the serpent, because He loves you, says the Lord, and He will rescue you and protect you. In His name we pray. And everybody said, Amen.
Please continue standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please note reference to bills on pages 1 and 2 of the calendar. Now, for a point of personal privilege, the chair recognizes the senator from Saline, Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I have the distinct honor today to introduce to you many of our community partners who are here for Salina at the State House today. The City of Salina is one of the area's top employers, managing major quality of life and amenities projects. Saline County, maintaining a 1,077-mile road network with 220 bridges and nearing completion on a $89.6 million jail facility, which is the largest infrastructure investment in county history. Salina Public Schools, the 12th largest school district in the state, preparing 81% of our regional workforce. The Salina Community Economic Development Organization that works with new businesses recruiting as well as entrepreneurial development. The Salina Airport Authority, providing $1.3 billion in economic impact to Saline County. It creates 42% of the county's gross regional product. The Salina Regional Healthcare Center, a healthcare hub for North Central Kansas with a full scope of specialized clinics, and 3 affiliate critical access hospitals in Abilene, Concordia, and Lindsborg. The Salina Area Technical College, Kansas Wesleyan University, and Kansas State University Salina, all providing over $100 million in economic impact combined. and providing a significant number of graduates to work in fields critical to the health of our communities. And of course, the Kansas University School of Medicine in Salina and the Kansas University School of Nursing in Salina that provide the only rural health medicine internships and residences in the state. Body, I welcome to the State House our community partners from Salina.
Salina, welcome to the Kansas Senate. The chair now recognizes the senator from Sedgwick, Senator Faust-Cadeau.
Oh, that's much better, isn't it? Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I have a few guests here in the gallery that I'd like to acknowledge. And if Julia Nightingale and Angie Stegman from Wichita State University, the social work department, if they would stand here in the gallery. And then Mr. Vice President, I also have a few other people in the gallery here, and if they would just stand, I have Donna Lehan, I have Suzanne Murphy, I have Emily Forrest and Deb Owens, and Mr. Vice President. They are here visiting us in the Capitol today from SPIA, Society of Professional Engineering Employees in Aerospace. And right behind me, Mr. Vice President, I have another wonderful guest here with me, and her wonderful name is Stephanie Merritt, and she is with ICT Food Rescue with the Kansas Food Action Network to make sure that we are providing food and nourishment to all Kansans. And if you would just give all of them a wonderful round of applause, I'd appreciate it.
Again, welcome to the Senate. The chair recognizes prior Senator Ed Berger from Reno County in the West Gallery. Welcome to the Senate. Again, please note reference of bills on pages 1 and 2 of the calendar. At this time, I'm withdrawing House Bill 2160 from the Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources and referring to the Committee on Transportation. Introduction of original motions and Senate resolutions. The clerk will read.
Senate Resolution number 1713 by Senators Reddy and others. A resolution recognizing March 8th, 2023 as International Women's Day.
The chair recognizes the senator from Riley, Senator Reddy.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Please ask the reader to read the resolution. Thank you.
Whereas International Women's Day was first celebrated in Austria, Denmark, and Germany, and Switzerland in 1911, and whereas more than 1 million people attended rallies campaigning for a woman's right to work, vote, and hold public office, as well as calling for an end to gender discrimination. And whereas in 1977, the United Nations General Assembly adopted a resolution calling on member states to proclaim a day for women's rights and international peace. And whereas, following the United Nations lead, each year the President of the United States issues 2 proclamations. The first proclamation calls on all citizens to observe March as National Women's History Month, and the second celebrates International Women's Day on March 8th. And whereas the United States continues to witness the rise of powerful movements that highlight places where women's rights and freedoms still fall short. And whereas advancing the rights, opportunities, and full participation of women and girls in cultural, economic, political, and social pursuits is the great unfinished business of the 21st century. And whereas International Women's Day is an opportunity to celebrate the collective power of women and their achievements, as well as recognize the challenges women still face. And whereas International Women's Day focuses the world's attention on women's rights and gender equality, inspires everyone to do their part to bring about positive change. Now, therefore, Be it resolved by the Senate of the State of Kansas that we recognize March 8th, 2023 as International Women's Day.
The chair recognizes the senator from Riley. Senator ready for comments.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. It's an International Women's Day, and I want to take a moment to acknowledge all of you and reflect on our journey. Before you were senators, before you found your careers, or before you even dreamed of what you were going to do today, someone in your ancestry, heritage, made an extraordinarily difficult decision to move to the United States. That decision placed you here today. While some were brought here against their will, many also came here because of their strong will. They wanted to provide a better life for their children. Whether your lineage is from Germany, Sweden, England, Russia, or other countries in Europe, Africa, or Asia, you are here because of them. They made their monumental journey with little money and few, if any, tangible items. Most didn't speak English. Most were doing hard labor, and women carried a heavy load. Women did their part to hold families together and make sure everyone was taken care of without any support from extended families. They were leaders in their own right, though they were not often recognized for it, and often made personal sacrifices as necessary. My parents decided to come to the United States in 1973 when I was 8 years old. I'm an immigrant and a naturalized citizen. So many people ask, where are you from? And I say Manhattan, Kansas, and then I say India. My daughter Santi got married last year in Indiana to a wonderful young man. We were shopping for wedding dresses, and a lady was assisting us. I was watching, advising, and writing down thoughts about the dresses. In the hustle and bustle of trying on dresses, she asked Santi, where are you from? Santi said, Kansas. I paused for a moment. Yes, she's from Kansas, period. And so are my sons. When they're asked where they're from, they respond, Kansas. And I think in 2 or 3 generations, my great-grandkids will probably say they're 5% Indian or something like that, and fill in other percentages with other nationalities, if they acknowledge it at all. Tonight in Manhattan, we have an event with 4 women panelists for International Women's Day, representing Ukraine, Afghanistan, Mexico, and Morocco. 3 of them have been in America less than 2 years, and they will share their stories. I've spoken with them, and one thing is very clear. They're grateful to be in the United States. They understand the challenges, but nothing compares to what they're facing in their own cultures, in their own countries, where they can't vote, they can't get an education, they can't leave their house without somebody escorting them, specifically a male escort, or can't get a job. They lack many freedoms that we take for granted. These women have made tremendous sacrifices so their children will have a better life than they did. I say all this to acknowledge International Women's Day and recognize that we intentionally chose the United States to be our home for a reason, for the freedom to think, to be who we want to be innovative, to live the lives the way we may not be able to live them in other countries, and to have the freedom to be decision makers. I hope we value the sacrifices made by our mothers, our grandmothers, and our great-grandmothers. I'm sure they never envisioned you in the seats you hold today. I know they would be proud of you. Let's recognize them and celebrate International Women's Day with pride and gratitude. Thank you.
Senator from Raleigh, you care to move your resolution?
Yes, I move an emergency be declared, the rules suspended, and Senate Resolution 1713 be adopted by voice vote.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Before recessing, are there announcements? The chair recognizes the senator. Seeing, yes, the chair recognizes Senator from Shawnee, Senator Dietrich.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. We have been negligent in reminding you of the shrimp peel. That is April 3rd. We've gotten several baskets and donations, and remember that 100% of this goes toward our Special Olympics, and we really would encourage you to bring us something as you go home over the weekend. I know we're still here a couple more days, but When you come back on Monday, if you could bring us whatever it is that you would like us to put into the raffle from your district, that would be great. Thank you so much.
Chair recognizes the senator from Johnson, Senator Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I want to announce that the Judiciary Committee will continue our hearing from today on House Bill 2021. We will continue that to tomorrow as well. We heard from proponents today. We will continue to hear and ask questions. We will ask questions of proponents tomorrow and hear from and answer and ask any questions of opponents tomorrow as well. Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
The chair recognizes the senator from Sherman, Senator Bellinger.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Senate Ways and Means will meet tomorrow, 10:30 normal time in our normal room. Thank you.
Are there other announcements? Seeing none, the chair recognizes the senator from Cali, Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. The Republicans will caucus upon the sound of the gavel in room 548, and I yield to the senator from Douglas, Senator Francisco.
Chair recognizes the senator from Douglas, Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. The Senate Democrats will caucus upon recess in 287 North. I yield back to the senator from Cali.
Senator from Cali, Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I move the Senate recess to the sound of the gavel.
You've heard the motion. All in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The motion carries. The Senate is recessed. The Senate will come to order. The chair recognizes the Majority Leader for Cali, Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I move the Senate resolve itself into Committee of the Whole for consideration of bills on the calendar under the heading of General Orders.
You have heard the motion. All in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The motion carried. The chair appoints the senator from Montgomery, Senator Peck, to preside over the Committee of the Whole.
The Senate, having resolved itself to the Committee of the Whole, will now consider those items listed on the calendar under the heading of General Orders. We will now turn our attention to House Bill 2238. The chair recognizes the senator from Sedgwick, Senator Erickson, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. House Bill 2238 is the Fairness in Women's Sports Act. It simply protects girls' athletic opportunities by ensuring that only biological females compete in girls' sports. This is the same bill that has been debated on this floor for the last 2 years. So as we debate it for a third year, the facts are the same, and let's keep them in mind. When it comes to athletic competition, men have an inherent physiological advantage. When men are allowed to participate in women's sports, that creates an unlevel playing field and takes away opportunities for women. This bill protects opportunities for all students and all athletes by ensuring that they are competing in a fair, appropriate environment. With that, Mr. Chair, I'll stand for questions.
Are there questions for the senator from Sedgwick? Chair recognizes the senator from Finney, Senator Dahl.
Which one is that?
We'll go with Dahl.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would the carrier of the bill stand for some questions?
He is standing.
Okay, on this, I guess the first question would be, the states that have passed this bill, how many of them have all the way from K to 12 for elementary and high school?
Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know that 17 states have passed this legislation. I don't know the breakdown of those that are K-12 or secondary on up.
Senator from Finney, Senator Dahl.
Okay, what I've found, I can't find any that goes from K to 6, from K to 6. Florida, for example, goes 7 to 12. So we have these, between the carrier of the bill and myself, we probably have 40 years of educational experience with this, with me being the most because she's a lot younger than I. Have you ever seen a kindergarten team from one school play a basketball game against a kindergarten team from another school sponsored by the school?
Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No.
How about?
Senator from Finney, Senator Dahl.
Excuse me. How about first grade?
Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No.
Senator from Finney, Senator Dahl.
Second, third, or fourth grade?
Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No.
Senator from Finney, Senator Dahl.
Fifth and sixth grade?
Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes.
Senator from Finney, Senator Dahl.
Okay, there are times with small schools that a sixth grade can play. If their school is small enough, I would give her that. That doesn't come under KSHA, though. That comes under the Department of Education. So when we got this second grade, because the reason we're putting K through 6 in here, I assume, is to prevent something happening that could happen that's not happened anywhere ever yet, correct?
Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, the reason we have K-12 in this bill is several-fold. One, Title IX, which has been in existence for 51 years, covers K-12. And I don't know that there's been mass problems or any issues or any lawsuits brought because Title IX specifies K-12. Secondly, excuse me, Mr. Chair, in West Virginia, there was a lawsuit brought because in West Virginia, they do have this law that starts at what they call secondary. Well, in some states that may be 5, 6, it may be 6, 7, we don't know. And districts here in Kansas define it differently as well. But in West Virginia, they started at their, whatever they considered secondary. A biological boy who identified as a girl in elementary school was allowed to play on the girls' team in elementary school because their law, their fairness law, did not cover elementary school. Well, when he became a middle schooler and now is under the secondary law, which fairness did apply, they said, no, you have to participate on the boys' team. Parents sued, and that is an ongoing lawsuit in West Virginia. By doing this, we avoid anything like that. It's the opposite. It prevents problems from happening by having K-12 in this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator from Finney, Senator Dahl.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So when we have Team A versus Team B, and Team B believes that Team A has transgender, they demand that the Team A has those kids tested. Do you have any idea how they're tested?
Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, this bill does not change anything, not a thing. That changes what KSHA currently does to determine sex for those playing in sports. And that is determined when they have a sports physical and the physician determines that on that participation physical at the beginning of the year. Every student has to have one before they can participate in a sport. This bill changes nothing about that process. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator from Finney, Senator Dahl.
I wasn't very good, but I've been a jock most of my life, and I had never had to take a sports physical until I was in the 6th grade because my school was small. So let's talk about 5th graders and if they get tested, because KSHA does not cover anyone. They cover 7 through 12 right now. They do not cover below the 7th grade. So let's say a 6th grader gets called out, they say they're transgendered. How does those kids get tested?
Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The same way they've been doing it for 51 years under Title IX.
Senator from Finney, Senator Dahl.
By having a sports physical when they're not given physical, because KSHA doesn't give physical, they don't require physicals for kids in the 6th grade. I think we've established that fact.
Is that a question?
So if we're doing, okay, so we're not going to test kids that are 7th grade and lower, 6th grade and lower. Is that correct?
Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Erickson.
I'm so sorry, Mr. Chair. I was being asked another question on the side. Would the good senator please repeat his question?
I'm certain he'd be glad to. Senator from Finney, Senator Dahl.
So we're not going to test kids that are below the 6th grade. Is that correct?
Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, nothing in this bill changes the way that schools, elementary schools have been operating as they have under Title IX for the past 51 years and how they've been operating under KSHA. Those rules still apply. This bill changes none of that.
Senator from Finney, Senator Dahl.
So let's say in the 6th grade we had these kids playing and one was accused of being a transgender, and the transgender and this person collides and they hit, and 2 years later they bring them to court because there's a 2-year. You can wait up to 2 years. You can sue this person or sue the school actually for if thinks it impeded the progress or cost the girl, a scholarship of some sort, or impeded her athletic prowess. Is that correct?
Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The bill does allow for a cause of action if someone has been harmed or a school has been harmed due to a biological male participating in a girl's sport. There is a 2-year statute of limitations, and that would be up for the court to decide.
Senator from Finney, Senator Dahl.
So does the carrier of the bill believe that a school, they have let's go to 6th grade, and they had a transgender participating, and there's something happened to protect the school, because you can sue the school, do you think that they would not have that student tested so they would have something to do, some kind of defense when they get sued 2 years later?
Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Erickson.
Mr. Chair, I don't know how to make it any more clear. Nothing changes how this has been handled for 51 years or under ks. This bill does not change that. I would assume that local control would take effect, and that district would have to decide what to do in that situation.
Senator from Finney, Senator Dahl.
I don't know how I can make this more clear, that a school, because of this bill, can be sued, or the parents can be sued if they think it impeded the progress of a kid. Who determines that the process was impeded by that athlete? We cost that kid a scholarship. Who determines that?
Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That would be a legal action, and if it proceeded that far, it would be the court.
Senator from Finney, Senator.
So the court is going to decide whether this player, this woman athlete, was good enough to compete, and she had a chance to get a college scholarship. And I hope that judge and jury is not parents, because I have a lot of parents felt like their kids were college bound and they needed to play ping pong or something. So the judge will determine whether this person was good enough athlete to get a college scholarship. Is that what you're saying to me?
Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What I am saying is the judge would determine if there was harm done, if there was damages, if there was lost opportunity that warranted a decision in favor of the plaintiff.
Senator from Finney, Senator Dahl.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe that this says that the act of fairness in women's sports, and I think through the bill, I don't see it right now, but it talks about, I know it's been talked about because we've been doing this bill over and over, that we would cost the athlete the opportunity to get a scholarship or to go on. We're ruining her career by them playing against a transgender, which, by the way, I believe for 7th grade and 12th grade on up, that this is a good bill. I just can't figure out why we're throwing shade on kindergarten and 6th graders. Can you tell me what is the purpose of having Title IX? I just don't think that cuts it. But I have an amendment. I turned it in, and it's 1535.
We'll pause a moment while the amendment is distributed. Thank you. Do you wish to explain your amendment or have it read?
I can explain it, I think.
Senator Dahl, go ahead and explain.
Line 25, we're striking elementary. And in line 28, we're striking kindergarten and inserting 7th. That's it.
Are there questions on the amendment for the senator from Finney? Senator from Shawnee, Senator O'Shea.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do you believe that young girls in elementary should have an opportunity to play sports in a fair environment?
Senator from Finney, Senator Dahl.
I have a hearing impairment. I didn't quite hear that. So can she maybe look at me when she asks that question so I can lip read a little bit?
She will be addressing the chair. Senator from Shawnee.
Can I come
Senator
up, stand by the
O'Shea.
chair?
Senator from Shawnee, Senator O'Shea.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I recall correctly, our rules state that I should be looking at you and speaking to you. So, do you believe that young women, let's say a second grade girl, deserves the right to fair competitive play?
Senator from Finney, Senator Dahl.
Do I believe a 5th grade girl, 2nd grade girl has a right to what? To fair play? Oh, absolutely.
Senator from Shawnee, Senator O'Shea.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's not what I'm hearing. So I don't have a huge issue with the amendment in terms of the practicality around it, but to insinuate that a girl can't be competitive from a very young age, whether or not there's a scholarship involved, is very insulting. Thank you.
Are there additional questions for the senator from Finney on the amendment? Senator from Shawnee, Senator Dietrich.
Thank you. I would like to speak in support of this amendment. May I?
Go ahead.
Thank you. So I know you all know that I don't always vote for this bill, and one of the reasons is because it includes elementary. So this amendment speaks to me, Mr. Chair. So I am 100% in support of women's sports. As superintendent in a school district right outside of Topeka, I was lucky to be able to offer a girls' wrestling team in our sports schedule, which at first caused me a little concern, but those girls wanted to wrestle, and we weren't going to wrestle boys, so that team has won the 6A state championship 3 times. We have 51 members of that team. I've surveyed my district about this fairness in women's sports issue because we keep coming back to it each year, and it hasn't gotten anywhere forward yet. So here, the results were kind of interesting. So I asked the question, do you think the legislature should be legislating this? Do you think we should ban all transgender students from playing in sports K-12 regardless of age? Or do you think it should only apply to secondary and college students? So the results came back of those that responded. A third wanted legislation to just legislators to stay out of this lane. They thought Keisha was doing a good enough job. A third said, let's just have this apply to secondary and college because it's fairness in women's sports, not necessarily talking about elementary. So they like the secondary, post-secondary. And then a third said everybody, K-12. So 2/3 of my district that's responded to this survey have said either don't do anything, let Keisha take care of it, it's not a problem here, or eliminate the elementary and make this a secondary, post-secondary applicable bill. So here's the issue for me, and we've talked about this before, and this is what the senator from Finney is talking about. At the secondary level, yes, we have forms. Keisha has, you've seen those forms because the other senator from Shawnee, who's much younger and prettier, put it on your desk last year. So you've seen that, and it asks gender questions, and you can clearly see male versus female. It's very easy to accommodate that. But my concern is this bill contains a section that includes elementary students, and we do not have Keisha forms on those students. So if a parent or anyone would question the gender of a child in the elementary programs, then they would turn to the school, because this is a school-based bill, and I'm putting on my school hat here. What would we do with that? We don't have Keisha physical forms. We do have a birth certificate, because when you enroll your kindergartner in school, you have to prove that they're 5 by August 31st. That's easy peasy, you would think. Except that's privately protected information. I couldn't share that. A teacher couldn't share that. A nurse couldn't share that with anybody. If you think concussion protocols are a problem, wait until government overreach says we have to determine your gender and all we have to go by is you standing in front of us, so what do we do with that? On the House floor, when they were debating this, they said, well, I guess we'll just have to do a physical inspection. That is wrong. We are not going to subject our elementary students to that. Absolutely not. So here's what I'm worried about. I've spent my entire life trying to take very good care of our kids. That absolutely is not appropriate. It's not. And I object to it. Do I think elementary students should be able to be competitive? Absolutely. Absolutely. And I would encourage them to do that. But here's the thing. There are 18 states that have passed bills like this called Fairness in Women's Sports Bills. 8 of those states, including Florida, do not include elementary. This is going to be the only time I believe you will ever hear me say that. Can we please be a little bit more like Florida on this bill, please? We need to protect our youngest, most vulnerable students from what this bill might require. And I've just heard many, many times that this bill is truly about, and I agree, secondary competition, secondary students, making sure that our girls and our boys are able to compete in same-sex teams and don't have unfair advantages. I completely get that, but I'm worried about the harm we might be causing with the implementation of this bill if we continue to keep elementary in there. Yes, would we be opening ourselves perhaps to a legal challenge? Wouldn't be the first time we've done something knowing that that might be the case. This is a school-based bill. What at school, who at school do you want to subject your elementary son or daughter to when it comes to determining gender? That is my issue. We can fix this if it's secondary and post-secondary. If it's elementary, we open up an entirely different can of worms that I think is harmful. So I do support this amendment. Thank you.
Senator from Johnson, Senator Warren, on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, just wanted to speak for a minute as a mom of 3 daughters and a son, and my 3 daughters competed in soccer both in elementary school and middle school, and I have one of my daughters who has tried out and made it to the high school girls soccer team as well. And while we don't necessarily at this time have school teams for elementary, I will tell you that watching my daughters compete in elementary school, if there had been a biological boy on the team, I can imagine would have impacted their self-esteem and their ability to fairly compete on the field. When we're competing in sports, it's our bodies that are out there competing, and to have a level playing field for our girls, even in elementary school, as I watched my daughters, is very important. So I'm not supportive of the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator from Finney, do you wish to address comments?
Sure. Senator from Johnson hit the nail on the head when she said that there's no school teams in elementary that compete against each other, because there's not, nowhere, none, zero, zap, nobody that competes. School to school, we don't have, it's state basketball week. In Buckland, Kansas right now, they're not having a state tournament for kindergarten teams all over the state. There's not, that doesn't happen. We are talking about school kids. And I want to tell you another thing, this will come down to testing. People will want to get testing done because they're going to have questions. Do you know what they're going to do to your little, I have a daughter, I have grandchildren. What they're going to do, how they address this. A doctor can perform a physical examination to determine an individual's gender based on external genitalia, or however you say it, and other physical characteristics. They're going to do that, and they can do that to that kid, that little girl, in the kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth. And we're talking about the well-being of our girls. Do we want to protect the fairness of our girls? That's the test that they use to determine whether they are transgender or not. This bill is a good bill for 7th through 12th. It is an absolutely shade bill for 6th through kindergarten. This is nothing but hate. This is nothing but throwing darts. With that, I move my amendment.
We have additional questions, Senator, on the amendment. The chair recognizes the senator from Sedgwick, Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you say that this is going, if we don't do this, that there's going to be genitalia inspected in elementary school. I'm confused because on the other hand, you're saying there are no competitive sports teams in elementary. So my question is, how is there going to be genital inspection if they're not competing under this bill?
Senator from Finney, Senator Dahl.
Because this is a question, this is, the reason we have this bill is because we're protecting school sports teams. So the inspections will happen with a team that's a sports team from a school. So if we don't have a school with a sports team and they're not happening from 6th grade down, why is this in the bill? That doesn't make a bit of sense. You know, we're supposed to be less regulations, best regulation, and here we are throwing this in there when it is not even, you can't even do it. So I agree with the senator from Sedgwick. There won't be any inspection because you don't have that at that level. But it could happen someday. And that's the only thing. That's the only reason. That's the only thing I can assume why we have this in that bill is that someday maybe they will have a kindergarten all-state team. I don't know.
Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just find the logic failing to say that, watch out, we're going to inspect your kids' genitals, but we're not having competitive sports team. It has to be a school-sponsored team competing against another school-sponsored team. And again, this bill allows KSHA, it directs KSHA to set the rules. So if there were ever competitive elementary school teams, I would assume and I would hope and I would encourage, and under this bill, KSHA's given the direction to regulate how that would look, and I would guess, based on what KSHA's done before, it would be in the same format with the sports physical to make sure those kids are healthy before they compete. So again, I will not support this amendment for the reasons I've stated. It's a distraction, it's fear-mongering, it's not in this bill, and I would like to share a little bit that I didn't start my path to a college athletic scholarship when I hit 6th or 7th grade. I started in elementary school, as do many elite young girls. They don't start when they it's a continuation. And anything that we do to discourage a level playing field, of encourage them, if a boy's allowed to take a spot away from any girl, and she doesn't get that chance to participate, that's unfair and that's not right. I don't care what level it is. And so this bill doesn't do the fear-mongering that I'm hearing from the carrier of this amendment. So I ask you not to be distracted by that and strike this amendment down. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator from Reno. You wish to respond now rather than in your close?
I was going to respond to that.
Senator from Finney, Senator Dahl.
Thank you. And close, we got another guy standing. So you want me to close or what?
You said you wanted to respond to the senator from Sedgwick's comments, and I was asking if you wanted to respond now or during your close.
I'll respond to that right now.
All right, Senator from Finney.
We were talking about defies logic. And that's a great statement. We're defying logic because we're passing something that's not there. We're passing that you cannot paint the moon green. It's something that's not there. We don't have competitive sports. So absolutely, if you want to be an athlete and you want to excel as an athlete, you better start early. There's no question about that. You start 4th, 5th grade, and we want level playing fields. I am not denying that. But they don't do it in schools. They do that with club games. They do that with rec, with Y. They don't do it at schools because they can't. Acacia won't let them.
Senator from Reno, Senator Stephan.
Thank you. Just a comment. As a father who raised a young girl into a Division I basketball player that then launched her academic career through that opportunity, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt the importance of a level playing field in the elementary years. And I know it's just as disruptive then as it is in middle school, as it is in high school, as it is at the collegiate level. So I have a huge problem with the idea of thinking that the problem doesn't start until 7th grade or some other period. It only makes sense to start this at the beginning. In years past, we've discussed the anatomy, the physiology, the gene expression, and we have clearly established that actually starts in utero, and significant physical differences are already expressed through the elementary years. So basically, in short, to fix this problem, to fix it correctly for people just like my daughter, we do it just as this bill describes. So I, as others, will not be supporting this amendment. Thank you.
Senator from Finney, Senator Dahl.
I don't know how clear I can make this. I agree completely, entirely, unbelievably. You know, I was a coach for a long time, coached Division I, coached players that played pro. You know, I think I got a grip on this. Yes, they need to start early, and they need a fair playing field. This bill doesn't do it. This bill is dealing with schools, school teams. That's the key to this bill, is school teams. It doesn't have anything to do with club basketball, the traveling teams. It has nothing to do with this. This deals with school teams. So the unfair playing field and all that, that's club basketball or whatever. You know, so I don't argue that the doctor from Reno, the senator from Reno, I do not argue that one bit. I agree with him. I agree with the senator from Sedgwick that they have to start in elementary and they have to have a level playing field. That is not the issue of this amendment. This amendment is dealing with the 6th through kindergarten school teams. School teams. Not club, not traveling, school teams.
To speak on the amendment, the chair recognizes the senator from Miami, Senator Baumgardner.
Actually, the senator from Sedgwick was wanting to respond to something, so I'm happy to give the floor to her and respond afterward.
Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do want to make a correction. This does include a club team if they are sponsored by a school and if they compete against another school. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator from Finney, Senator Dahl.
I've been around schools. The senator from Miami and the senator from Sedgwick and myself, now we're getting up to about 60 years of educational experience. I've yet to see a club, school, 6th grade down, sponsored by a school. And I want to know if the senator from Sedgwick has ever seen a school-sponsored club team from 6th grade down that was sponsored by the school.
Senator from Sedgwick, do you care to answer that question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will yield to the senator from Miami. I believe she has a response.
All right, Senator from Miami, Senator Baumgardner.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. You know, we're talking about club sports. At first, we were talking about school sports, but then club sports and rec sports got into the mix. And the fact of the matter is that we know what's happening today in our public schools is that they are sending out materials to kids in elementary level saying, oh, the rec league, the rec organization that we have in our community, sign-ups are this weekend or next week for the rec leagues or for the club sports. And this is where the lines get very blurred, because in the school districts that are in my Senate district, those rec leagues are intermingled with our school districts. In fact, part of the bylaws are that the school district is going to provide funding to the rec league, that the rec leagues and even club sports are going to have their practices and their games or matches at the schools, that the school district will be disseminating the materials for parents to go register their kids, and this is starting at the elementary level. Another component is that members of the elected school board will serve on the rec league board. So to say that it's separate, it isn't. The schools are providing the materials. The schools are providing the spaces for practices and for competitions. The schools, and we're talking elementary schools, are involved front and center with what's happening with club sports as well as our rec leagues. And one of the interesting things is, along with that form that the parent is to fill out and turn in, guess what they're supposed to do when they go to sign up their child? You got to bring that birth certificate. We need to have proof of, are they going to be on the boys' team or on the girls' team? That is, if it's not a joint boys and girls team. You also have to have proof of when they were born, so we're not having 8-year-olds competing against 7-year-olds, so that the age brackets are fair. So to say that our public schools are not involved is just not keeping up with what's happening in our public schools with regard to competition at the elementary grade level. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yielding back to the senator from Sedgwick, Senator Erickson, do you wish to speak?
No, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Senator from Finney, Senator Dahl.
Thank you. First of all, on the birth certificate, is it that the long form or the short form?
You asking that of?
Of the senator from Miami.
Senator from Miami, Senator Baumgartner, you wish to answer the question?
Yes, Mr. Chair, it is. They are required to bring, you as a parent, you are required to bring an official birth certificate. Not only do you need it to register them, but you need to make sure that that birth certificate is there and available for every competition. We still have the same envelope that has the birth certificates for our children, because before those little bitty ball soccer players could compete, they needed to show the back of their spikes to make sure they weren't metal spikes, and then they had to share their birth certificate so that the referee there on the pitch could identify that they were the appropriate gender and they were the appropriate age to be competing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator from Finney, Senator Dahl.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. They're not being sponsored by the school. They give the gym, the gym, they allow them to use the gym, and they should, because those kids' parents are taxpayers. So they should be able to, I mean, if you do not allow people to use public facilities, the tax facility, that your tax is being paid for, that's, to say that that's sponsoring, that's a school sponsor event because they're using a gym for practice, that's a stretch.
Senator from Johnson, Senator Gossage.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say that I can appreciate the thoughts and concerns of the senator from Finney and the senator from Shawnee. I had some of the same concerns initially about this bill, and I thought, I taught elementary school. I'm not sure why we're saying kindergarten through 6th. I mean, we don't have much competition that are girls only, boys only. I'm not sure. But then when I went back and looked at Title IX, it was based upon Title IX, of course, which was protection for young women. And that's how women's sports kind of became into play when back in the dark ages, when I was in high school, we didn't have girls' sports. There was no such thing. So I'm pleased to see that we were able to have that, girls' competitive sports. So it just made sense to me. Sure, if you don't have, if they're not segregated and you don't have separate girls' sports and boys' sports in elementary school, they're not going to be affected anyway. But I think to mirror what we did with Title IX just makes sense in the bill, so I will not be supporting this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator from Finney, Senator Dahl.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The 8 states that passed it, the bill, without elementary, are they, this is for the carrier of the bill, for the 8 states that passed.
We're actually on the amendment at this time.
Well, this is just a statement then, okay?
Sure.
The 8 states that passed without elementary included, are they in violation of Title IX? That's a question I guess you got to ask yourself, because I can't ask questions because we're on the amendment. But that's how I want to stress this. This has nothing to do with Title IX. That's silly talk.
Are there additional questions on the amendment? Seeing none, Senator from Finney, Senator Dahl, you may close on your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was fun. Great debate. Hope nobody's feelings are hurt. We're all just, just trying to do our thing, you know what I mean? So if I offended anyone, sorry, I really am. I don't want to hurt nobody's feelings. But I ask you that, I heard one time in a caucus, this is the only one I was at actually, but they said, a guy said a small subset of people, and he was saying it in a way that it doesn't matter. And if we're talking about transgender K through 6 being involved in school teams, playing against another school team, that'd have to be an awful small subset. I want you to look into your heart and not do what you're, don't be a robot. Think, is this thing here, is this right to keep K through 6 from schools sponsored teams when it doesn't exist? With that, I close. I would like to have a roll call vote.
So you move your amendment?
I move my amendment.
All right, you've heard the motion.
Need 5 hands.
There's been a request for a roll call vote. Seeing 5 hands, this is a roll call vote. Clerk will call the roll.
Alley. Baumgartner. Billinger. Blasey. Bowers. Clays. Corson. Dietrich. Dahl. Erickson. Fag. Fascudo. Francisco. Gossage. Haley. Holland. Holscher. Kirshen. Cluse. Longbine. Masterson. McGinn. Olson. O'Shea. Peck. Peterson. Petty. Pittman.
Aye.
Pyle. Ready. Reichman. Schallenberger, Steffen, Straub, Sykes, Thompson, Tyson, Ware, Warren, Wilborn.
Has every member taken the opportunity to vote? Senator from Sherman, Senator Billinger.
Thank you. No.
Does any member wish to explain their vote? Does any member wish to change their vote? Seeing none, the clerk will close the roll and tally the vote. Eleven having voted in favor and 24 against, the motion fails. We are back on the bill. Are there additional questions for the carrier of the bill? Senator from Wyandotte, Senator Petty.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually don't have a question. I just have some comments to make. I often hear people on the floor, or senators on the floor, comment about their personal lives, and I'm a teacher by profession, mother of 2 daughters, and daughters who played at the college level, and I never thought about discrimination for them, except my second daughter when she was playing softball at the age of 8, that we had to carry around the birth certificate because she was taller and she was heavier, and so she was facing discrimination then as a girl just because of her size, and how that might have affected her, even though she continued on in sports and even played at the high school level. And then as a teacher, I've never actually, I've seen lots of K-3 teams that are mixed, both boys and girls, and I've taught my entire career in public education, and I've never seen any kindergarten through 6th grade teams that have been sponsored by a school district or a school that I taught in, but I have seen plenty of things sent home to parents, whether it's about a skating party or whether it's about an opportunity to play sports through the local rec, in this case, the district that I taught in, local rec, but they were not sponsored in any way by the school district. So it's unfortunate to think about this amendment that just went down and that this bill would still include K through 6. And even though the bill is silent, the question is, if challenged, whether someone saying a direct or indirect, as the bill says, direct or indirect cause of effect to challenge, and I have a question about what indirect would actually mean, that there would have to be some, it seems like somehow there's going to have to be some validation about the sex of that child that is being brought into question if there is a lawsuit brought forward. And so this just makes me think about what kind, as I taught and I would say I also was prior in high school prior to Title IX, and so I participated in GAA, and outside of school participated in sports. So always been an important part of my growing up years and my children's growing up years. And as we look at the evidence, there's all this evidence about the opportunities for our adolescents and our children to participate in sports, how important it is for the positive outcomes, and that they usually have better grades, they have greater homework completion, higher educational and occupational aspirations, and improved self-esteem. And yet we want to talk about denying those opportunities to a segment of our children. So with this, we're undermining the benefits that all youth can participate in team sports. And when we look at within our own state, it's and as the carrier of the original bill said, now we're on the third year talking about this, it continues to be a question about why we haven't had any incidents or situations in the state of Kansas. And we've learned that our own association, ks.gov, has dealt with it specifically with transgender children and has a process in place that they've put in place without any legislation, and is working well. We have 79,000 registered children participating through ks.gov sports. 41,000 are girls, and there's 3 transgender girls registered. I would never have known this without people checking those stats, because I haven't heard any issue of discrimination through our ks.gov sports in the state of Kansas. Not this year, not in 2022, not in 2021. There's been 0 complaints filed. There's been zero incidences. So often it seems today that we are putting in place or dealing with wanting to pass legislation that has nothing to do with what's going on in our state of Kansas. This piece of legislation cries foul to a small segment of the population. And we often talk about mental health and the importance of mental health and how, we want to have a positive, caring, welcoming environment in Kansas so we can, grow our businesses, grow our families. And yet we are looking at a piece of legislation that does just the opposite for a segment of our population. I don't think that segment of population is going to go away. And, every child is important, and nothing about what we do today is going to change their personal view of themselves. But maybe what we should be thinking about is, do we want them to see themselves in a positive light or a negative? This bill is not going to have an impact on a fairness issue that doesn't even exist.
Are there questions for the Senator from Sedgwick? Senator from Leavenworth, Senator Pittman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got to echo my fellow Wyandotte senator. The problem we're addressing here is very, very, very small. If you saw a challenge, three students across the state of Kansas. I looked at some of the testimony, and over the last 5 times we've debated this bill, and I was looking up one of the articles. I think it's called, Transgender Women in the Female Category of Sport, Perspectives on Testosterone Suppression and Performance Advantage. And it clearly lays out some of the advantages and disadvantages of testosterone in the sports. But I think something was missing from that discussion as you read through that article, as they come to their conclusions about this, that quoting them, if transgender women are restricted within or excluded from a female category of sport, the important question is whether or not this exclusion, as we're discussing this total ban today, is necessary and proportionate to the goal of ensuring fair, safe, and meaningful competition. Regardless of what the future will bring in terms of revised transgender policies, we are in an age where this will continue. It is clear that the different sports differ vastly in terms of physiological determinants of success. Thus, we argue against universal, which is what we're discussing, universal guidelines for transgender athletes in sport, and instead propose that each individual sports federation evaluate their own conditions for inclusivity, fairness, and safety. I find that the KSHA, at the levels of high school sport, where I find most passion for protecting the women's sports and their competitiveness, to be well regulated at this point by KSHA. And if anything, we need to enable KSHA to continue this, perhaps. NCAA seems to be doing a fine job, but it's complicated. It's complicated. I think we're taking a broad stroke here, broad stroke approach from K on upwards. And we're disregarding the levels of sport, the types of sport, and I don't think that's right. I think that we're blowing up a problem that doesn't seem to be a priority of a lot of Kansans I know. I'll point out this is the third bill we'll be passing out to the governor. First two, they were whatever they were. And this shows Kansans our priority. This effectively shows the priority of this chamber, of this legislature, that we're going to focus on this problem or this challenge of 3 individuals inside of our state that aren't causing issues. And what I've heard from my constituents is we're worried about workforce, we're worried about our teacher shortage, we're worried about a whole host of other things, housing, about our property tax assessments and valuations, and I've got smart colleagues up here working on all those problems. Very smart. But I regret sometimes that I feel we get distracted from the things that are hurting our fellow citizens out there, Mr. Chair. And I feel our priorities, in my opinion, I understand the passion of the carrier of the bill and where they're coming from. But I feel like we are showing the state of Kansas that our priorities are not necessarily with their everyday lives and what they're thinking about on an ongoing basis. And I do stand opposed to this particular bill, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Are there questions for the senator from Sedgwick? Seeing none, there is a senator from Sedgwick, Senator Faust-Godot.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If the gentlelady from Sedgwick would stand for question.
She is standing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just to clarify for those listening in, so is there language in this legislation to address co-ed sports? So how are we addressing that piece in the bill? Thank you.
Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, it does, that there are categories that either male, female, or co-ed.
Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Faust-Godot.
So in that piece, so can you be a transgender person participating in that co-ed sports?
Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes.
Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Faust-Godot.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So thank you for that information. Most people know that I ran for office to continue fighting for equal rights for all people. And so, Mr. Chairman, to stay on point, sometimes I want to share everything that I think and know and feel, but I'm just going to kind of stay on point here. So I want to just kind of share, as a nation, we decided long ago that discrimination is wrong and that everyone should have the same opportunities to succeed in life. And that should include transgender youth. Schools across the country know that transgender students, like any student, thrive when they are treated with dignity and respect. School officials shouldn't treat a transgender female student as a girl between 8 a.m. and 3 p.m. and then treat them like she's a boy when sports practice starts. It's deeply hurtful to the student, and it disrupts the school's policy of treating all kids fairly, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 484 is another in a long line of legislation from the Kansas legislature that some feel attacks our children here in Kansas. Disputes under the bill will lead to outing LGBTQ and kids to their families, teachers, and classmates. We all care about protecting and advancing opportunities for women and girls to have equal opportunities. We just heard Senator Reddy's resolution about International Women's Day. We should be participating in sports. Mr. Chairman, when I was in junior high school and high school, we had co-ed gym, and I know we're not talking about that in this legislation, but look at me, it kept all of my generation fit and in shape, Mr. Chairman. If politicians really cared about fairness in women's sports, let's address the disparities in opportunities, funding. The other night, I was awakened in the night, Mr. Chairman, and I was watching the school channel of USD 259 in my district, and it talked about those children with special needs, and a lot of the children in my district don't get to participate, Mr. Chairman, in school activities because there's a lack of after-school busing to take them back, so they don't get to participate in sports, whether they are female, transgender, or male, or they just don't even get to participate, Mr. Chairman. I remember when my daughters were in elementary school, in order for them to stay after school and hold the stop sign. You know, all the kids wanted to do that. They wanted to feel like they were part of the school. And so I would leave work and travel back and pick them up. And it just, a lot of things are unfair. So, the funding opportunities, the leadership opportunities for all girls and women in the United States of America, Mr. Chairman, studies indicate that transgender youths are at an increased risk of mental health problems and suicidal tendencies, according to a survey from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Mr. Chairman. About 18% of high school students identify as transgender. About 35% reported that they have attempted suicide. Mr. Chairman, and members of this body, we all were here yesterday on March 7th, and a lot of youth were in this building advocating against mental health issues, advocating for funding for mental health, and they spoke against suicide or advocated for suicide prevention. Mr. Chairman, I live in Wichita, Kansas, District 29. It's next to the senator from Cedric. She's District 30. I represent Wesley Medical Center via Christie St. Joseph, and I have toured those hospitals with the CEOs, and we went to the children's unit to talk about all of them who have attempted suicide. And some of their parents were there, and they shared that with COVID, with transgender issues, discrimination, embarrassment, it's sad. I, again, advocate for equal rights for all people, all human beings, and I appreciate the gentlelady from Cedric's responding to the co-ed question or in the bill, but I just wanted to rise and in support of all Kansas students and youth. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator from Johnson, Senator Sykes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not a question, just some comments. During the first of what is now 6 debates we've had in this chamber on this legislation, one of my colleagues said, "I fully support and am happy for these athletes to be true to themselves. They should have the right to express themselves in school." Yet, this is the third bill we've seen this session alone targeting the trans community. The previous 2 bills had nothing to do with athletics. The debates on Senate Bill 233 and Senate Bill 180 made clear what my colleagues have until now tried to hide behind the guise of fairness. These bills are an attack on our trans community. These are template bills written by think tanks, and they find poll-tested language and they send it out with state-paid spokesperson to attack Kansans. Kansans aren't asking for this. Over 80 individuals testified in committee in opposition to this legislation. Only 9 were in support of it, and nearly half of those supporters are from outside of Kansas. These bills serve no purpose other than to advance the national extreme agenda to impose government-mandated ostracization of transgender people from society. During a speech at the Conservative Political Action Conference last week, Michael Knowles declared, "For the good of society, transgenderism must be eradicated from public life entirely, the whole preposterous ideology at every level." Well, this body is doing the heavy lifting to make that a reality in Kansas. With this legislation, we're prohibiting a specific and a vulnerable group from participating in the very activities that promote inclusion and understanding. This is after we've penalized physicians for providing reversal age-appropriate care to kids struggling with their gender expression and created statute to explicitly limit and define what it means to be a man and a woman. We know the effect this type of discourse has on the transgender community, yet this legislature has tripled down on these attacks rooted in ignorance and hate. Transgender teenagers are 7.6 times more likely to attempt suicide as cisgender peers. And according to a survey from the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, about 1.8% of those high school students identify as transgender. 35 of those students have reported that they have attempted suicide. It's shameful that we welcomed youth into this building yesterday, and we promised them to improve mental health outcomes for our state. And just 24 hours later, we are on track to pass yet another bill harming their classmates. It's shameful that we're spending International Women's Day prohibiting women and girls from living authentically, fully, and vibrantly. Mr. Chair, trans girls are girls. Trans women are women. And we should be ashamed to be a party to these vicious attacks on them. I know I am.
Are there questions for the senator from Sedgwick? Seeing none, Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Erickson, you may close.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate the debate and dialogue. Yes, this is the 3rd year. But I believe it's because it is a priority for Kansans to make sure that girls have a fair and equal playing field, and that is exactly what this bill is about. I've heard a lot of, quite frankly, inflammatory accusations and name-calling being done during this debate. We say we don't like bullying. Name-calling is a hallmark of bullying. I've heard that this bill, if you support this, you're ignorant and hateful, and you should be ashamed. Mr. Chair, truth sounds like hate to those who hate the truth. So let's talk about the truth. And let's not be distracted, because the opponents of this legislation, they can't argue the science. They can't argue that biological males have a physiological advantage. They can't argue that the very organizations that they say are the experts and we should trust them are the very organizations that have qualifying policies that acknowledge the physiological advantage that males have over females. Different qualifying times, different size equipment. They're the very organizations that acknowledge that. They can't dispute what we all know as athletes and as spectators of sport. So they resort to distractions and name calling. So let's talk about some of the distractions. This isn't a problem for Kansas. Only 3. Ironically, I have a picture of my 3 granddaughters on my desk today. It's for them that I'm standing here, being called hateful and ignorant. Because I guess it doesn't matter if it's 3 Kansans we don't know, 3 girls somewhere out there, no-name girls, who get their opportunity taken away. There's my 3 granddaughters or anybody in this chamber's wife, sister, daughter who loses their opportunity. But the fact of the matter is, Mr. Chair, I've asked the opponents, how many girls have to lose their opportunity? How many complaints have to be made before you would deem it a problem and support doing something about it? And the truth is, they never answer, because it's not about that. That's a distraction. We've already talked about the distraction about elementary school students and genital inspections. Not in the bill. Nothing changes in that regard. You know, the one group that I haven't heard anybody talk about are the girl athletes. I've heard it said that this bill takes away opportunity for participation. You're right, it does, for biological girls. Because if we don't pass this, they have nowhere to play. A biological male who identifies as a girl can play on the boys' team and the girls' team. Where does the biological girl go who lost her spot? Co-ed. It's not fair, Mr. Chair. It's a distraction. I know my words aren't going to change where everybody is on this bill. But let's be honest about our motives and what we're saying. Let's debate the truth, the facts, the science. This is about fairness in athletic competitions. They want to make it about everything else. Well, we don't consider the mental health and what it does to the biological women subjected to this. So I would like to close with some testimony that we heard in committee from Riley Gaines. Riley is a 12-time NCAA All-American, a 5-time SEC champion, a 2-time Olympic trial qualifier in swimming from the University of Kentucky. She talked about how growing up from a very early age, getting up and going to the pool to train early in the morning when it was cold, and then practicing late at night. We all know how these elite athletes train and prepare. As I read this, I want you to think about it, if it would be a problem or if you would complain if it were your daughter or granddaughter. Riley wrote, on March 17th, 2022, my teammates and I, as well as female swimmers from universities across the country, were forced to compete against a biological male named Leah Thomas. Thomas was allowed to compete in the women's division after competing as a member of the University of Pennsylvania's men's team for 3 years. We watched on the side of the pool as Thomas swam to a national title in the 500-yard freestyle, beating out the most impressive and accomplished female swimmers in the country. including Olympians and American record holders. Previously, Thomas had been ranked in as 462nd in the men's division. Mr. Chair, I'm going to stop there for a second. Because when I asked for proof in our committee as to the claim, there's no proof that biological men have an advantage competing in women's sports. That was after we heard this. I think that's pretty compelling proof. Riley goes on, but that's not all. In addition to being forced to give up our awards, our titles, and our opportunities, the NCAA, that expert organization, forced female swimmers to share a locker room with Thomas, a 6'4" biological male who exposed his genitalia in the locker room to swimmers in various stages of undress. Riley shared that one of those girls in that locker room that day had been violently raped and had no warning that there was going to be an unknown male to her walk in that locker room and expose himself. I ask you, Mr. Chair, what about her mental health? What about her rights? What about all the girls in that locker room that day? We haven't talked about that. She goes on to say, we were not asked for our consent, and we did not give our consent. If nothing else, I truly hope you see how this is a violation of our right to privacy and how some of us felt uncomfortable, embarrassed, and traumatized. I can attest to the tears that I witnessed from finishers who missed being named an All-American by one spot that Leah Thomas took. I can attest to the extreme discomfort in the locker room from 18-year-old girls who are exposed to male body parts and having to undress with the male in the locker room. What if that were your daughter or granddaughter? I can attest to the anger and frustration expressed by girls who had worked so hard and sacrificed so much to get to this moment, only to have to compete in what felt like a farce. And I can attest to the fact that around the country, female athletes were threatened, intimidated, and emotionally blackmailed into silence and submission. Mr. Chair, if the facts don't convince you, if you're still truly concerned and basing your decision on feelings, I ask you to consider the feelings of those girls, the mental health of those athletes. Let's not let this happen in Kansas, not on my watch, not with my daughters and granddaughters, and not for any girl in the state of Kansas. Mr. Chair, I move that when the committee rises and reports, it reports House Bill 2238 favorably for passage.
You have heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. We will now turn our attention to Senate Bill 244. For the purposes of carrying the bill, the chair recognizes a senator from Johnson, Senator Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you all have been watching the news lately, you have seen what's happened to a large retailer in the state of Oregon who recently closed all stores in the city of Portland because of the rampant crime and the theft at the stores. Well, that's a relatively new phenomenon that's been called organized retail crime, and it's here in Kansas as well. We have organized rings of criminals who are invading retail stores, large and small, and stealing from them and walking out unopposed because store employees have been told not to interfere for their own safety. And we need to stop this problem here in Kansas. These are groups of sophisticated criminal rings organized to recruit individuals to steal from retailers and then resell the stolen goods to fund more serious crime. Senate Bill 244 offers us a solution here in Kansas, and it would allow the Attorney General to prosecute crimes like these that touch more than one county in Kansas. Currently, we do not have the authority for the Attorney General to do that, and this bill would allow the Office of Attorney General to come and provide some prosecutorial support where this is occurring. Since 2020, this type of crime has increased 26%, and in Kansas, we hear it's reported Kansas is one of the top 10 states where this crime is occurring. With that, Mr. Chair, I would stand for questions.
Are there questions for the senator from Johnson? Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Faust-Godot.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for the senator from Johnson.
Certainly, she's standing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just the main piece of this legislation, does it increase or penalties on those caught doing this? Just what's the main meat of the legislation? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator from Johnson, Senator Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The bill merely increases and gives concurrent authority to the Attorney General with any county or district attorney to prosecute any crime or any attempted crime, conspiracy, or criminal solicitation that is part of an alleged course of conduct, of criminal conduct that occurred in one or more Kansas counties.
Are there additional questions for the senator from Johnson? Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Faust-Godot.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm so sorry. My computer was down, and I just didn't get a chance to look at the legislation. I just got it going again here. So is that individuals from other states and come here, or just Kansans, or what authority would we have in this state of Kansas for others that come in and do that, Mr. Chairman? Thank you, Senator.
Senator from Johnson, Senator Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Were the bill to become law, there would be an additional one full-time attorney position and one full-time special agent position in the Office of Attorney General to help with this prosecution of persons who in Kansas either attempted this crime or were part of an alleged course of criminal conduct. It has to be here in Kansas for us to be able to prosecute it here in Kansas.
Senator from Douglas, Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I heard the senator from Johnson say that this would allow the Attorney General to prosecute such a crime in one or more counties. And I think I'm reading in the bill, it's just one page on line 29, that criminal conduct occurred in 2 or more counties. So my understanding was that this actually expands his authority if there is more than one county involved. Is that the case?
Senator from Johnson, Senator Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, that is the case, and that would be why we have the request also for an additional FTE attorney position and a special agent FTE position and a fiscal note associated with it as well.
Senator from Johnson, Senator Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We heard this about a week ago in Judiciary. I think this is a very important bill. It's a white-collar crime bill. I know a lot of my, excuse me, my voice is a little off today. I got a lot of friends out at Home Depot and places like this where people come in, they load the cart up, and they just walk it right out the door without paying, put it in their car. They go to the next store, and it could be Sutherland's or wherever, and they steal thousands of dollars worth of stuff.
it's costing every person in this state money. It causes that store and it puts people out of business, losing jobs because of that. I think this is an important bill that gives the Attorney General the tool when these small counties can't afford prosecution or don't have the funds to prosecute some of them white-collar crimes like this. And so I support this bill wholeheartedly, and I think we get some of these bad actors out of our state. Hopefully they leave here and don't, we arrest them and put them in jail and stop this. It's costing every Kansan money in one way or another. So I urge the body to support this bill.
Senator from Johnson, Senator Warren, you wish to respond?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Along those lines, we heard testimony that sometimes they were driving pallets out of the front door of the store and with no ability to step in. Sometimes in one county, the crime doesn't rise to the level of large enough for the one county to prosecute, but when we've got more than one county and it would rise to the level where we could take some action, the Attorney General could, and put a stop to this.
Additional questions from the Senator from Johnson, Senator from Sedgwick, Senator Faust-Godot.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. No question, but I just wanted to clarify. I agree with both the senators from Johnson. I just wanted clarification on the legislation. And I think, we know that others are listening in. And, people have questions and just wanted to clarify. And Mr. Chairman, I did one night. I couldn't sleep and I was watching news from another state, and I think it's awful that kids or individuals are running into jewelry stores and just, taking everything out and running out. It's a new fad, and I think it should be stopped. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Are there additional questions for the Senator from Johnson? Seeing none, Senator from Johnson, Senator Warren, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and appreciate the comments and the recognition. This is impacting retailers and businesses big and small across the state of Kansas, and this would be one more tool that the state has to help put a stop to this. And with that, Mr. Chair, I move that when the committee rises and reports, it reports Senate Bill 244 favorably for passage.
You have heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. We will now turn our attention to Senate Bill 53. For the purpose of carrying Senate Bill 53, the chair recognizes the senator from Lynn, Senator Tyson, to adopt the committee report and explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The committee did make an amendment to the bill, so I move we adopt the committee report.
You've heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Senator
Thank you,
Lynn,
Mr. Chairman.
Continue.
This bill is would allow or would exempt sales tax on manufacturers' coupons. It's not the first time this body has heard this legislation before. Hopefully we can pass it. What happened in prior years, whether we like it or not, we are part of Streamline, and if we did not get approval from Streamline and use the language that they agreed to, then we would be out of Streamline compliance, and possibly, they always tag a major fiscal note to that, over $60 million the state could lose. So this bill, when you go to the grocery store, if you use a manufacturer's coupon, currently, you pay sales tax on the portion that the coupon's worth. If it's a $1 coupon, then you pay sales tax on that $1. This bill would exempt the amount, since you're not spending it, remove it from state sales tax. The amendment in committee was to implement it January 1st, 2024. That allows vendors and suppliers enough time to program their systems, update their systems, and handle the change. With that, I would stand for questions.
Are there questions for the senator from Lynn? Senator from Leavenworth, Senator Pittman.
Mr. Chair, I just want to stand in support of this. It seems like something that for those people using coupons, obviously need to use the coupons oftentimes. Seems like an exacerbation if we were to put sales tax on there. I am so happy the chair worked this out with the streamlining, and I stand in strong support of this, Mr. Chair.
Are there questions from the senator from Lynn? Seeing none, Senator from Lynn, Senator Tyson, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the committee rises in report, it reports Senate Bill 53 favorably for passage.
You have heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Chair recognizes the Majority Leader from Cali, Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the committee rise and report.
You have heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. That concludes general orders.
The clerk will read the committee report.
On motion of Senator Alley, the Senate resolved itself into the Committee of the Whole for considerations of bills on the calendar under the heading of General Orders with Senator Peck in the chair. Recommended that House Bill 2238, Senate Bill 244 be passed, and Senate Bill 53 be amended by the adoption of the committee report, and the bill be passed as amended.
The chair recognizes the senator from Montgomery, Senator Peck, to adopt the committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I move adoption of the committee report.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The motion carried. Introduction of bills and concurrent resolutions. The clerk will read.
Senate Bill number 302 by Committee on Federal and State Affairs, an act concerning financial institutions. Senate Bill number 303 by Committee on Federal and State Affairs, an act concerning legal tender. Senate Bill number 304 by Committee on Federal and State Affairs, an act concerning school districts. Senate Bill number 305 by Committee on Federal and State Affairs, an act concerning health professions and practices. And Senate Bill number 306 by Committee on Assessment and Taxation, an act concerning income taxation.
This constitutes the introduction of Senate Bill 302 through Senate Bill 306. Messages from the House, the clerk will read.
Announcing passage of Substitute House Bill 2077, HB 2083, HB 2144, and HB 2344. House Bill 2077, an act concerning information technology. House Bill 2083, an act concerning real property. House Bill 2144, an act concerning trusts. And House Bill 2344, an act concerning economic development.
This constitutes the introduction of those bills previously read. Reports of standing committees, the clerk will read.
Mr. President, the Committee on Assessment and Taxation recommends Senate Bill 127 be passed. Mr. President, the Committee on Assessment and Taxation recommends Senate Bill 55 be amended by substituting with a new bill to be designated as substitute for Senate Bill number 55, and then the substitute bill be passed.
There having been an objection to House Bill 2184 and House Bill 2191 appearing on the consent calendar, these bills will be removed and placed on general orders. Are there announcements? Seeing none, the chair recognizes the senator from Cali, Senator Alley. Chair recognizes the senator from Cali, Senator Alley.
I move the Senate adjourn until 2:30 p.m. on Thursday, March 6, 2023.
You have heard the motion. All in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The motion carries. He said it's March 9th. Yeah. Yeah. The Senate is adjourned.